Mediating Handgun Issues in Child Custody Cases, part of the series Mediation Tips by Fran Brochstein. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Fran Brochstein, a mediator and attorney in Texas.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And so today our topic is to discuss guns and weapons. So in mediation, a whole lot, especially in family law mediations, we find ourselves discussing issues between parents involving guns being left out in the open where a child might have access to it. This has come up numerous times over the years in some of the cases I've worked, whether I was a lawyer for a parent or the mediator myself. And so we thought it would be kind of cool, or not cool, but it would be important to discuss this topic. And so, one, to explain that it's a topic that keeps coming up, and two, to give some tips about how we might be able to help resolve conflicts in this area. It's an important issue, and it's an issue that actually is life or death for many people. And so we wanted to start off by screen sharing and showing a Washington Post article that came out of Florida, that pertains to a story out of Florida, June 7th, 2022, by Jonathan Edwards. Mother charged after 2-year-old finds gun, fatally shoots his father. Florida sheriff says gun owners could 100% prevent unintentional shootings by locking up their guns. And so you can check out the article. We'll post it on the YouTube version of this. But if you're listening to the podcast, definitely check out the YouTube video so you can learn more about this story. And so anyway, we're sharing this story because it points to the issue that keeps happening, which is guns being left out in the open around children in a very dangerous fashion. And so typically the mediation topic that comes up is where the parties are fighting about how do we make sure that parent X locks up the weapons. So with that, Fran, would you like to delve a little bit into this issue and what you've seen over the years in your mediations and how this topic is resolved?
Well, I'm in Texas, and my dad was ex-military, so I grew up with loaded handguns in the home. But we were taught from a very young age to respect them. We went out and shot them, which again, as a small child, taught me the power of guns. They were locked up, but I do think it's an ongoing problem, and there are problems with some guns. Some people say, well, it has a safety. Well, there are some guns that don't have safeties. So gun knowledge is the responsibility of the adults, and they need to teach children to respect them. And it's become standard now that you should if you have guns, you should at least have a gun safe. And ideally, they have individual gun locks that you can put on the gun so that you can't do the trigger. The problem becomes if you drop a gun, which is what's happening, I think, with some of these cases with these little tiny kids, it goes off automatically. And so even with everything you do, if you're going to have a gun in your home, you need to be diligent and you need to assume the worst and hope for the best.
And I live in a country where, in order to have a gun, you need to have a special permit. This permit is being issued by the authorities who also have your medical examination from the angle of your psychological and psychiatrical abilities to abide by the laws that apply regarding that. The gun needs to be stored always in a locked place and needs to be unloaded. And but I need to say that nevertheless, we are facing situations where children have access to that, and that's scary. Fortunately, we don't have many shootings, so the system of protection apparently works relatively well because it just doesn't happen. And within the European Union, where Poland is, Poland has actually the lowest number of guns that are, because all of our guns are counted, and having a gun without a permit is a criminal offense, which is prosecuted. So basically, that would be the state as we have. Then schools are safe because the possibility that's likeliness that someone will come having a gun and will threaten the kids or the teachers is actually non-existing. We're not even preparing anybody for that. It's not even a part of the schooling system where you are being taught how to behave or how to react to this sort of a threat. Um, I just wanted to say that still, when you have the violence prevention, home violence prevention, and the perpetrator has a gun at home, this will be immediately taken away. So, no playing with guns, actually, and it is very severely treated here.
Yeah, Natalia, the what you just said about in domestic violence cases, the guns can be taken away. In Texas, there's so many loopholes around that because we have similar statutes. But then if you have a rifle, or a shotgun, you might be able to get around it. But there's before, ladies, we turn to solutions uh, to this kind of problem. Let's discuss what we've actually seen. Um, Typically, the typical scenario, all right, that comes up is, and I think back some years ago about a case I was mediating, where I was representing one of the parents in this situation, and that was where parent X says that parent Y is you know having guns around and doesn't lock them up, and now it's not a crime to have such a weapon, okay, especially if the person's of age and they are properly licensed and all of that. But parent X is concerned that parent Y is going to allow the child to, have access to this thing and potentially harm themselves. And so you guys can imagine the solution to this, right? We resolved the case and we are able to address it. We simply put in the court order that the guns have to be locked up at all times while parent Y has the child. Pretty easy fix. However, like how do you prevent bigger issues? Because that seems like a simple solution, and I think most parents would agree. Okay, but recently we had Uvalde, Texas happen. Okay. And unfortunately, now the name Uvalde has become synonymous with a mass shooting. Okay. Like many, we start giving dates to terrorist events like 9/11, and we start giving cities names for shootings in this country, like Parkland or El Paso. This is what it's come down to. It's kind of crazy. So we had a Uvalde happen where this young man went and killed a whole bunch of these kids and teachers. And he was disturbed, but he had access to this weapon and he used it, brandished it on Facebook, social media, on Facebook. But people, were saying, oh, there were no red flags, or we should have known better, and the cops failed, and all these kids got massacred. And so, how does any of this, what we're talking about, help prevent that? Do you think it can? Any part of it? What are your thoughts?
That's a toughie because it's mental illness. And the problem that I've often seen is that parents are in denial about their children. And children, especially with social media now, are able to post things that a lot of parents wouldn't see. And now we have, as Natalia pointed out before we began recording, we can do 3D guns at home. Recently, there was a shooting in Japan. They don't have guns in Japan, but the guy made it at home. Apparently, he looked on the internet and figured out how to make a gun and killed someone. So I do think, I know in Texas that if you're a minor child under the age of 18 and you do something, your parents are held liable. And so you would think that that might encourage parents to take a hands on approach. But unfortunately, we've all seen it where parents say, well, I have no control over my child. And I've always said, if you cannot intimidate a 5-year old, you cannot intimidate a 15-year-old. So I do believe that, and it's tough being a parent, you need to constantly be monitoring your children and understand that kids don't think long term or don't understand all the possible ramifications of their actions. And so it's the parent's job, which is hard because I've done it, um, is to try to stay 2 steps ahead of the kids.
And having said that, it's also about frustration so many times. Mental illness is one, but frustration is the second one. And I believe there are ways to prevent frustration. And then you can have certain ways to do that. Um, Insert it into your mediation agreement, into your MSA, why and how. If you already see that the child is frustrated, which is most cases where the parents are actually having an argument, make sure that there is a way that the child can really disload all the stress they have. Physical activities, not just computer games, of course, but physical activities, some sort of a hobby or interest. Recently, I've been speaking to many parents and parents of of children themselves. They were saying that this is a great idea, preventing a child from having access to stupid ideas. If they have a regular extra educational curriculum where they go and they do skating or they do football or they do acrobatics, anything, or dancing, that is so regular and keeps them busy that they don't really have time to think about things that would be illegal or that would be just filling in their free time that nobody actually has for them in their homes, in their schools, in their lives.
Yeah, you know, contributing to the children's lives, with events like this, like Natalia is saying, is a good first step. Other solutions that I was thinking about, in addition to just locking guns up, are monitor the internet usage of your children. Okay, there's so many tools out there now, filters and stuff like that. You can go to your ISP, it's set up, tinker with your water box, and tell it to alert you when certain keywords are are searched, or you can block certain keywords from being accessed. You can talk to your child together. You can be basically a team as parents when you want to approach this. Okay, just telling parent why to lock up the guns might not necessarily get to the root of the problem. Okay, because parent why might forget, human error happens. Okay, and if they forget, then if your child's old enough, they should have at least been talked to about gun safety and why they should go remind the adults to make sure that this thing gets under lock and key. And therapy and counseling, if you, I don't think it needs to get to the level, if you think your kid, is prone to go and use guns, that's when you should get therapy and counseling for them. I think you should, anytime your child is going through some kind of very serious, mental stress, you need to look into therapy and counseling for them. All right. A lot of times when parents are splitting up or they're going through a divorce, these kind of things are triggers for children to relapse to scenarios that will give them mental anguish, okay, and affect them negatively. And so you never know where that might go. Okay, you hear about cases where kids cutting themselves or other kind of extreme reactions. But you never know. In fact, I've told people this before. Children watch this channel. You know, every single post that we do on these videos, YouTube asks me, is this made for kids? So of course I always say no, it's not. Because if it's made for kids, YouTube is trying to protect children and have them only see things on YouTube for kids because there's a difference between regular YouTube and YouTube. But let's be honest, even though it's not made for kids, children still access it because they'll have a smartphone in their pocket or they're able to check the stuff up. So even in this episode, what I'm saying is we want everybody to be knowledgeable. If you're a child, if you're 16, if you're 15, you know better. Okay. Make sure that you're not going around playing with guns. Make sure you tell an adult to lock that thing up because you never know what child might get their hands on it. Okay. So, anyway, that's my public service announcement for the week. But what else are your thoughts about solutions that and remedies to this issue?
Well, at Mac, I know here in Texas, you and I have seen kids taking guns to school because of bullying or
Yeah.
because they're afraid. And again, that parents need to communicate with their children and they need to keep an eye on their children and try to, and it's hard to do. And sometimes it's kids shut down and don't discuss things. But if a child is being bullied, and I agree with you, Mac, they need to be in counseling. It's hard sometimes to find a counselor for kids, or the right now, especially since COVID, they're swamped. To get an appointment with a counselor that specializes in children is a struggle. Some are booked up a month or two ahead. And so, again, you know, it's not, everyone wants to make it seem like a simple solution. This is a complex, difficult, multi-level problem. And so, no matter what people say, you can never be too careful. Even if you're keeping them locked up and try to keep them out of their way, kids are smart and kids will figure out ways to get past locked doors and into safes. I mean, children can be mischievous. God bless them. So, try to stay two steps ahead and anticipate the worst and hope for the best.
Having said that, I think that there are already some takeaways for our listeners or viewers. I think that the generality, and that's something that is never actually stressed enough, is talk to your children, even if it is hard for you, even if you feel offended, even if the child is aggressive towards you. Speak with your kid. Try to understand it with his eyes, with his words. Be aware of your child is doing, with whom they keep in touch, whom they are contacting on the internet. General rule for every single parent: being vigilant, being aware, wanting to be the best possible
Yeah.
parent. So
And
stay tuned. Yeah.
yeah, and help put all those things into your MSA, your mediation agreement, right? So that you can hold people accountable for it. So, all right, guys, thank you so much, Natalia.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you.
Until next time.